Aren't you glad you play AFL Fantasy? No, that's not sarcasm. That's a genuine reflection. Because if you're a Merrett or a Grundy owner, you could have been staring down some donuts or some poor coverage options. But here at AFL Fantasy, you got 2 trades a week to make this week and a further 2 next week in the final round of the year to get your team in the shape that you would like it to be. Whether it's you're pushing for a hat, maybe you can win it overall, going for a PB rank, or you're in a vital league matchup, you're trying to get it done against your mates or your work colleagues, just some random people on the internet. Regardless, this week's top 10 trade targets, I think, is really going to help you. And fresh off the back of the news that Brodie Grundy is going to miss this coming round with concussion protocol, I had to put a ruck at my number 1 trade target spot. And who do I think's the best ruck to trade into? To me, it's Rowan Marshall. He's my number 1 trade target. He's coming off the fresh back of a 135. That's not even proper language, MJ. Sort your life out. Coming off a 135. He's got an average of 123 in his last 5. So outside of Grundy, this is the form ruckman of AFL Fantasy right now. Grundy's in 21% of teams overall, so not crazy amounts. But if you're in that upper echelon, that percentage is much higher. 77% of the top 100 coaches have their hands on Grundy. The good news is, no matter who you go down to, it'll give you a little bit of play money to be able to do a secondary trade, which is going to be handy. But Romar, to me, is the best option. Best form at the moment. And of all the rucks, has got the best 1-2 punch of a DVP matchup. This week, he's got Essendon. Over the last 10 rounds, Essendon have given up the most points to rucks in AFL Fantasy. And some of the concerns we had a couple of weeks ago around Marshall was, well, Max Heath is coming in and they might roll share. But politely, Max, well, he has taken some centre bounce opportunities. It's been at no greater damage over the last couple of weeks to what a normal relief ruck would do for St Kilda. So I don't think Heath is a concern. The fact that he got subbed out in his game probably would indicate they're going to maintain the course. They've had a good 3 weeks of victory form. They're not going to change too much around that just yet. Romar's got a great matchup this week. And the reason I want to share last 10 is sometimes certain matchups can be a bit misleading in a 5-game sample size. It's fair, but sometimes, 1 or 2 ruck matchups can be a bit more misleading, and so it's there. So I wanted to share that, it's not as big over the last 5, but over the last 10, no, Essendon are gifting and giving up points. I mean, come on, Blixars and Stanley are the factors of last week. Anyway, let's jog on. Then the second week, they've got the Giants, who again, over the last 10, a 6th best ruck matchup. Briggs has given up some decent points. And while Marshall might struggle at around the ground stoppage to get some hitouts politely aren't where he wins a big bulk of his points. It's his ability and athleticism to get around the ground and impact the contest that really helps him put up good AFL fantasy numbers. To me, he is the number 1 trade target this week. Who's my number 2? Well, maybe you're already a Marshall owner and you've got Grundy. You're like, MJ, who's your second best ruck? All right, let's give you one. It's Tim English. He's got an average of 111 over the last 5. And importantly, last week, put up a triple-digit score against Max Gawn, who's one of the hardest rucks to be able to score against in AFL Fantasy. So it's a great outcome. He's got the West Coast Eagles this week. Again, in the last 10, they're the 3rd easiest matchup for ruck, so that's a great sign. And by the way, in his last 3 games against them, here's what he's done. A 98, a 146, and a 132. Really good signs to sit through there. And then Fremantle, again, a bit challenging to get a read on their ruck run history because they've had Darcy in and out and Jackson solo. Other times it's the duality. There have been more of a duality over the last month. And so while Freo are on paper a little harder, I could see to double up on. They've actually been a decent DVP matchup. Like they're top 5 in the last 5. But I just think Tim's the type of ruckman that actually isn't a great matchup because athletically Jackson will stay with him when that happens. And then Darcy, I feel like, will physically wear him down. So that's why he's not number 1. I don't think it's a bad matchup at all. The Eagles and the Dockers is who he's got. I don't think it's bad at all. His last, round 4, he got a 114 on them. His last 5 games against the Dockers a ton. So I'm talking this is a good matchup. I just don't think it's as great as Marshall. Hence why he's number 2. Money-wise, they're basically chalk and cheese. It's nothing really different. I've got Marshall at 1. I've got English not too far behind it too. And so don't hear negativity around Tim. He's been outstanding this year. I was really hesitant on him as an option at points this year, but proved me wrong. He's been exceptional. Back to that kind of PB All-Australian caliber fantasy footy ruck, that's for sure. My number 3 trade target is the guy that is absolutely in ripping form in our defensive lines and is the easiest VC pick of the week. Who am I talking about? Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. He's coming off an average of 124 in the last 3 games, and in his last 11 matches, 10 of them have been triple-digit scores. No one has been as good or as long in the last 3 months in our defensive line than what Naz has. He's got Essendon this week, top 6 matchup for inside mids. And I just don't see someone that can run with him politely. They might try to put someone with him. I just don't see someone that could do that with him. It could be absolutely messy. I know they slowed a little bit about what Max Holmes did. And as good as Max is, he's not Naz. Bailey Smith had a field day. I think it's going to be probably somewhere between the two at the very least. And what we saw about Nasiah is if the game's not on his terms, like it wasn't in this round just gone, well, clearly there's freedom from Russ Lyon and the coaching staff to say, mate, go in and take some kick-ins, move yourself behind the ball, get yourself involved in the play. We just want you involved in the game, not just because we want your long-term signature, but also our team functions better when the ball is funneled through you. And so even if he can't get it done at inside midfield role, as great as it is this week against Essendon, and again, the easiest VC of the round, is he'll just move into a position and get the ball another way. It's the guy I don't want to go against between now and the end of the year. It's been like that for a month, and it's really hurt, with one exception, the Geelong tag game. Pretty much since before the mid-season bye, it's just been burn after burn. Sometimes I know it's painful and it's expensive, but gosh, maybe you've got a Grundy, you can basically transplant the same cash of Grundy to Naz, and now that other defensive move, you might be able to move something else. Who knows how you get there? But to me, I just don't want to go against Naz for you. Gosh, it's nervous. He sits there. By the way, the week after this, to wrap up the year, he's got the Giants. They are the toughest inside midfield matchup at the moment, but he did do a 102 on them early in the year when he played off half-back. Much like I said, if he does get a restricted opportunity through the midfield, where he's just played a little bit more accountably at stoppage, I can just see him creating, spreading, moving behind the ball and getting a fair chance. He just plays wherever he likes, and I want every piece of the pie of Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. My number 4 trade target is Jordan Dawson. He's coming off the back of a monster 147 against the West Coast Eagles. And in the last 3 games, he is the highest averaging player in AFL Fantasy right now. He is absolutely knocking it out of the park. And he's coming up against the Magpies this week, who he has a ripping history against. Earlier this year, he dished up a 138 on them. They just don't have the assets that can stop him, as far as I'm concerned. And then in his prior 2 games ahead of that, a 117 and a 172. The Eagles were a good matchup for him. The Pies are actually just as good for him. They are the 3rd easiest team to score against right now for inside midfields. Their mix is all over the shop. And a victory in this game for the Crows solidifies not only top 4, but a top 2 spot. I can see them throwing all the stops into this game. And then the one after that, they've got North Melbourne at Marvel. It's a good matchup for him as well. There is a small little caveat flag I want to put here, and that is that, gosh, if the Crows win and win well, and a couple of other variables roll through round 23, it wouldn't shock me to see the Crows rest him in round 24. It really wouldn't shock me, but he is pushing for a Brownlow. That's all I'll say. So there's a risk profile here. I don't think it's large. I can see him wanting to lead his team well through and into the final game of the year, but a victory this week might make it a conversation. A loss this week, I don't think they're in that luxurious position. As much as they would think they could beat North Melbourne, they probably thought the same about West Coast and needed their Superman captain to get them there. So he's my number 4 trade target. And then my number 5, I've got some I'll give you some diverging options for uniqueness, but to me, Brian Myers still sits in this pocket as someone I want to have on the run home. He's coming off the back of a 96 last week against the Bombers. A little underwhelming, some might have thought, but he's still got a triple-digit average in the last three. The only forwards that are averaging more than him over the last three rounds are a couple of teammates in Baslenka and Jeremy Cameron, and then Norton. It's the first time I thought he'd mention him in the trade targets, right? Regardless, I just like him as a play. All the attention does, and understandably so, hit on Jeremy. I think Grind's going to continue to dominate. It isn't a great matchup this week for him in Sydney. I've got to say that much. He hasn't got a career ton against them. They're the fourth hardest team over the last 5 weeks for general forward. So it's not an amazing matchup, but there are some things about the way Sydney play and the way that Grind do that I feel like he could sneak out in a good spot. Yes, there could be a Campbell tag that sits on him here, so this is a bit of a flag. But you're not just getting Grind for a solid matchup this week. You're also targeting the gravy game of Richmond and solidifying that you get it. Sometimes you need to take a little risk profile into this week and go, no, I'm going to get it. And there's ways to do it, right? Maybe you're a Luke Jackson owner and you're like, you know what? I'm going to get Grundy. I'm going to turn him into Grind. And all of a sudden I can flip something else up. Okay, away you go. And in a duality, maybe you're running a Tom McCarthy at D6, and this is the creative way where you can get up to your Nazaya and you can get Grind and you can put Jackson in there. There's ways of doing it to get there. But I want that Tigers matchup. A 102 just 2 months ago. They're the second easiest team for general forwards. I feel like that could be an absolute monster field day for him and his Cats teammates. I want two of them next week. But if you could get one now, Matta's not the one I'd love this week against Sydney. Jezza's going to get a fair chunk of attention. I think he'll still be fine, by the way. Grind, for me, of all those Cats forwards, Baslenka accepted, is the one that I'd probably be comfortable to run the potentially really challenging matchup this week against Sydney. So those are my top five. Marshall, English, Nazaya, Jordan Dawson, Grind Myers. All right, let's give you one more that's got an amazing matchup. Not unique, but got an amazing matchup that I think you could get some hands on. Harry Sheezel. In his last five, he's gone 110. He's gone 108 last week. And there's a great matchup this week. Like, this might only be the play you get for 1 week, but that's totally okay. Maybe you can't afford to get up to Naz, but you can afford to get who I think's got an amazing matchup. North Melbourne have Richmond. They are the best team to score against for inside mids at the moment. He got a 102 on them earlier this year. I can see him absolutely tearing this one apart, just with the way that North Melbourne are moving the ball, the way that Richmond are setting up structurally and defensively. I could really see this being a big 130 plus 140 plus game for Harry. Everything leans to this. I know he's not unique, but it's a very defensive maneuvering of who's the guy that could really hurt you, that's highly owned everywhere, that you don't want to run your Callum Mills versus Harry Sheezel type. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be there. It's Naz number one, but Harry's not too far away. You do want to get it this week. I wouldn't want to get into it next week, but really when you're looking for 2 week plays, you're looking for one that has an absolute knockout punch. And the second, you can at least either plan to jump off the following week, or you're okay to embrace a little bit of pain. The week after that is the Crows. They are the third hardest matchup for inside mids at the moment. But as I've said, if Adelaide win this round, and it's a big if, you could just see the Crows being on a little bit of half-assed gear as they lock in that top 2 spot. I'm still pretty happy with how he plays. To give me some confidence that, yeah, they're one of the harder matchups. He did get a 90 on them earlier in the year in this sort of weird half-forward mid-roll that he kind of had. I'd kind of settle for that, to be honest here, just because I think this matchup this week could be good. So I still have him over the next 2 weeks going 110 plus, which is great as a trade outcome. I just think he's going to get an absolute ceiling game this week. For me, it's a protective maneuver, matching the fixture, matching the guy that in your league or in your overall could be the guy that could really sting with a big game this week. Looking for something unique? I got you. Looking for something cheap? I got you. My number 7 trade target this week, Cooper Lord. 1% of coaches have their hands on him, and he's just over 600,000. He has had a major role change over the last 2 weeks, and he's done it well. He's become the tagger at Carlton. Last week, he played the Gold Coast Suns, an 82% centre bounce attendance. It's his highest of the year, and he knocked out 112 and kept Noah Anderson out of the game. The week earlier, sat on Caleb Sarong, 71% centre bounce attendance rate, and scored an 87. Outstanding results. And some of those games aren't easy to score against. So he's scoring well in a nice baseline defensively through the tackles and work rate, but then doing some other stuff on the other side. Yes, the likes of No Walsh and No Chera have aided that opportunity, but he's taken it with both hands, and he's got 2 good targets to go after. This coming week, he's got Zach Butters to come and tag. What's interesting about that to go alongside a defined role is over the last 5 weeks, Port Adelaide are the number 2 matchup for inside mids, second easiest. Great outcome. And then in the final game of the year, and again, a nice early in the round matchup, he's got Zach Merrett and Essendon, who are the 6th easiest inside midfield to score against. So 2 clear tag targets, 2 fantasy-friendly inside mid matchups. And Carlton have just got to learn a lot. Just chuck him in. And at 600K, right, you're making money off almost any maneuver to get there, to be able to redeploy somewhere. And off you go. I love this move. If you need something unique, again, 1%. Maybe you're trying to build out a forward loophole option because you want to protect off the likes of a Rankin or protect a McRae or anything like that. He's a cheapish option to sit at F7 and you can rotate and be able to loophole. Or if you're just like, no, MJ, I've just got no money. I need an option. I got you. He's got an inside midfield matchup. He's going to tag and his 2 fantasy favourable ones. I really love this move. If you're cash strapped for something at F6 or you want to get some depth and not spend too much, this could be the play for you. Let's keep staying in unique spaces. My number 8 trade target, currently not owned by anyone in the top 100 overall. Who am I talking about? Will Ashcroft. In his last 5, he's going at an average of 109, and some of those matchups have not been easy on a fixture analysis perspective. Over the last 5 weeks, of all pure mids, he's the number 7th ranked midfielder in the last 5 rounds. Outstanding form. 115, 112, 90, 109, and 118. Nothing hurting you on the basement, nothing killing it yet on the ceiling. But we saw a massive jump last week of his centre bounce. Now that Lachie Neale is out, we saw a 30% centre bounce increase, and it gave us the best score that he had given over the last 5 rounds. The good news is, not only is he super unique in that top 100 with nobody owning him, he's got a pretty good matchup this week against Freo. That's what you need. You need at least one really good matchup to be able to be there. Otherwise, you're just not going into it. He's got Freo this week. Over the last 5, top 5 matchup for inside mids to score against. And if any attention is going to a Brisbane midfielder, it is going to the soon-to-be All-Australian suitcase, Hugh McCluggage. So he will get much more time and space. I know it's crazy to say that the Norm Smith medalist won't get attention, but Hugh has shown he is the one without Neale that you need to put time, energy, and stopping power onto, should Fremantle choose to do it. Now, the week after that, they do have a really tough matchup. It is Hawthorn. Really tough. Finals defining for both these 2 teams. Depending on how these rounds result go, could be fighting to stay in the 8, let alone pushing from a top 4 perspective, depending on how the 9 games go this week. But I still feel really comfortable with the way that Brisbane play, the role that he's sitting in. I'm still pretty comfortable to get on to some Will. And again, take the matchup this week. He'll be about $1 million next week. If you want to jump off and get onto somebody that's a 1-week play, you can do that. But if you got stuck with Will for the 2, which I'm okay to, I think there's still enough good signs that sit through there. My number 9 trade target, nearing the end of this episode, Jack Sinclair. Unfortunately, if you're not an owner yet, I think you've missed the ceiling game of the year. He was enormous last week with a 146. Over the last 5 rounds, he's gone an average of 112. He's been one of the best defenders in the last 5 weeks. You know, it's him, it's Naz, and not much else. He's been outstanding. Sheezel's been good, but not quite over the last 5 what Jack has been able to do. He's coming up against Essendon this week. Again, if you can't afford to get up to Naz, but you want a share of a nice matchup, this is pretty handy. Essendon, not all that accurate in front of goals, do miss a lot of shots, gifting designated kickers plenty of ball opportunity. And we know that Jack almost exclusively plays in every single time. They're the number 2 team for designated kickers, and he's having a ripping game. And then he's got the Giants in the final game of the year. He's got a 106 on them earlier this year, and the 5th easiest team for scoring for playmakers off halfback, that transition ball movement, giving up a lot of points. And again, if any attention's gone anywhere, it is sitting on Naz. It is not coming to Jack. And whenever they need a little bit of speed and power through the mid, whether they want to drop Naz behind the ball to get more involved, they throw Jack in the mids and he impacts the game. Really love him. You did miss the ceiling game. Let's hope for your case it's not that true, but I think you might have. But we'll see how we go. Essendon this week, early round matchup. Nice VC option if you can't get into Naz, as far as I'm concerned. And then my last trade target for the round. It might be a little bit of recency bias, but we do need to give him some attention and love. My number 10 trade target is Josh Dunkley. He's got tons in his last 5 games. 3 of them have been over 130, so there's your ceiling. And he's got a 125 average in these last 5 rounds. No Neil just means that more ball winning responsibility has to come on him. Yes, we saw a lift in centre bounces in Ashcroft. We saw a little bit more attention on Suitcase, but more ball started to funnel through Josh. Now, is that causation or correlation to the specific match? We'll have to need a bit more data, but to me, I just like this matchup against Fremantle for them. He got a 126 earlier this year on them. We've already talked about how they're one of the easier matchups over the last 5 games for inside mids. And then the Hawthorn game isn't amazing, but I can see him standing alongside a player like a Jai Newcomb and just absolutely smothering him with pressure, burning him on the other side with work rate, making him really have to fight for every possession. I could see Josh continuing this run of 125 over the last 5. I could see that running through this week of Fremantle. And if you can get your 105, 110 against the Hawks, then you're probably pretty happy with it. Yeah, you could have got him cheaper 5-6 weeks ago. This is the Josh Dunkley cycle, right? And that's the only hesitation I have is, and every time I've ever in my life paid up for Josh Dunkley, it's never worked out. He's always that kind of guy that he's a great buy low because there are some games where he plays more negating function, slows people down, and as a result doesn't have the massive outpouring of market share through disposals. The reason I'm happy to put him in here and not say, oh boy, you're paying up for him, is no Neil means there is more volume of opportunity for ball winning. And I feel like he and Ashcroft took a pretty decent clip of that over the week. And I'm expecting that to maintain. And then with a good matchup this week, I'm happy to get my hands on that. So those are my top 10 trade targets for this week. The second last round of AFL Fantasy for the year. Where has this season gone? The rule is, if I name a player that you are trading into, you have to like the video. I'm so sorry. It's in the terms and conditions of watching the video. You just got to do it. Like the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you do so. We so appreciate that you do it. There is content dropping every day that there is no AFL played during season 2025. Later in the round, we've got a Supercoach version of the trade targets, and our strategy session will also drop. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to get in touch with us across socials, the details are in the description of this episode, as well as where you can get in touch with us across Patreon, get access to our store, everything. It's all there. Make sure you get involved. Hey, friends, good luck this week. 2 weeks left to go. I hope your moves all land nicely for you, and we can't wait to be back talking fantasy footy with you here at the Coaches Panel real soon.